Welcome to the Bullseye Breakdown, the podcast where CEOs, founders, and leaders of industry break down big decisions, big wins, and big lessons. No fluff, just real talk. Let's get into it. This is the Bullseye Breakdown. Vinyl is back, but it never looked or sounded like this before. Today's guest is a true innovator in the world of audio design. Tony Vitale, CEO of Vertical Grooves, has taken vintage audio aesthetics and fused them with cutting-edge technology, creating products that don't just play music. They put on a show. From the floating record vertical turntable that flipped the vinyl game on its head to high-end gramophones that caught the attention of the Grammy Awards. Tony has built a brand that resonates with audiophiles and design lovers alike. But his journey wasn't a straight shot to success. He took over a struggling company and turned it into an industry leader. Today, we're going deep on how he did it, what it takes to reinvent a legacy medium, and where audio tech is heading next. Let's take aim and drop the needle on this conversation with Tony Vitale. Tony, welcome.
That was good. You're hired.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you being here today. How are you?
Good.
Good.
Excited to share some thoughts with you.
All right, Tony, you are a very dynamic individual and you have a history that is very similar to mine, and I would love for you to share with our audience a little bit of your backstory and where you come from and how you got into Vertical Grooves in the beginning in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, when you say, how did I get into this company, that's a few years ago. How did I get into vinyl, and where does that core come from me? Just from even the last question, in case you couldn't tell by my accent, I am from New York, specifically the Bronx. And there was something happening in the Bronx back in the early to mid 70s, and bringing a turntable out onto the streets started becoming a popular thing. And as a white kid who grew up in an all-black environment, I can honestly say, for me, DJing saved my life. It made me feel like a somebody, that I was able to do something with 2 records that just touched people a certain way. Mostly all my friends were mostly black on my block, and that was special. And I got to tell you, it gave me a little bit of respect. It gave me a little bit of the novelty of who I was at the time, and it struck to my core and hasn't left. And so in every 8 to 10 years of my life, it always seems to be coming back to that for me. And on this particular occasion, there was something called COVID that hit a few years ago. I actually bought this turntable. I was one of the first investors of the company that made this turntable. And it sat in a box for 4 to 5 years. And then during COVID, we all had dark moments during COVID. I opened up the box. I put the turntable on my shelf, moved my SL1200, which was my old DJing turntable, off to the side, put that front and center, and then something special happened to me. Whatever happened to that company? Whatever happened to that guy? All those questions started being asked. And I started playing the vinyl. And when I realized the previous company was in trouble, Grammy-worthy, I said, maybe this is it. Maybe this is where I'm supposed to be at this particular time, is to save this turntable, save this company, so that way other people can experience it. That's, a lot of years in one breath right there.
There was a couple other things that happened in between there, but Yeah. This is such a cool story because you actually bring in a bit of a different element that most of the guests thus far have not necessarily had, and it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. That is, you took over a company. You actually you saw Vertical Grooves and you saw what the vision could be, and you had the ability and the means to go ahead and step in and take it over. I guess my first question to you is, why? What made you decide, I'm going to do this? This is something that I want to get into.
The why is probably the easiest part. Everything else is really difficult. The why is love. Love for the product. You're right. When I first saw the product, I was working on a television show, and the inventor of the product came on. And even though we did 1,000 episodes for entrepreneurs, this one particular product not only caught my eye, but caught my heart. And when I say that, it's because I used to be a DJ when I was a kid, growing up in the Bronx. And then being a DJ afforded me to travel the world. And then when I got further into the entertainment business, I started making soundtracks and mixtapes. I then made movies, and two of the movies that I made were about a DJ. I find myself in Chicago, and here goes somebody who created this absolutely beautiful turntable that I had never seen anything like before, both in its design and its functionality. And I was one of the first investors. I think he may have gotten into a little bit of trouble with all the success and couldn't keep up the production line. And unfortunately, there was a hold on the company from going forward. Well, the partner and I stepped in and said, hey, we want to give it a shot, really roping in the production so that it could be made at a price and sold at a price that it was going to turn a profit. And here we are today, selling a beautiful piece of vintage audio, a centerpiece of somebody's living room that's functional and profitable as a business.
It's amazing. And those two things are not always parallel to each other. A lot of the times they may be tangential, and sometimes they are definitely intersecting. So, it's intriguing to me that you would look, it makes sense, I guess, after hearing what you're just saying in terms of your background, which is a phenomenally intriguing background in itself, but being in the film and television industry and coming across and always having that love for music, I think that goes hand in hand because music tells stories. And to see that product in front of you and have the opportunity to kind of jump into it, I now understand why that makes perfect sense that you would get into it. But understanding that it's a legacy medium, something that, is now seeing a very strong resurgence, it's a perfect time to jump into something that people are taking much more highly in regard than they ever did and being able to put it front and center.
So here's just kind of another little push. When I went for my MBA, one of the very first courses was for digital marketing, but the instructor, our Fleisch, he's going to kill me if I forget I pronounce his last name, at the University of Illinois, he started this class with Revenge of the Analog. So he found this book where analog product was becoming more to the forefront. And he talked about turntables, he talked about vinyl records, he talked about books, he talked about magazines. And from that very first class all the way through, everything that I absorbed from that schooling was all with the focus in mind of saying, how do I get this product out there for the world to enjoy as much as I do in a very strategic fashion? Every single class that I took had something to do with, where I'm at today. But the very first class was the Revenge of Analog. How does analog now make its way back into the lexicon and the appreciation of, when it comes to vinyl music, to be able to hold music, not just listen to it, be able to see music. And so there's something there. Exactly what it is, I don't know. But I have a 12-year-old daughter who, there was something about listening to Taylor Swift and then actually buying a Taylor Swift album that, she sat there with the liner notes. She just read the back and front cover of that. It was just a great experience.
And I think we're of an age that we recall that. I was a little bit beyond vinyl, but I was there for cassettes and I was there for CDs, and the liner notes. That is something that that's just sparking kind of days gone by. Like that was the most exciting thing besides whatever the tape or CD look like as you crack that open.
Here's something that, maybe you could appreciate this because we talked a little bit about Spotify before. So I was with my daughter yesterday and she pulled something off of TikTok and she says, Dad, you're going to like this. A young man was trying to communicate to a young woman, but she had blocked his phone number. So since they shared the same, shared the same Spotify account, or he was on her Spotify account, instead of sending her messages, which he couldn't do, he was sending her titles of the song, expressing the way he felt through all these titles. She got a kick out of it. Now, I don't know if these two are going to fall in love and get married, make babies, and live happily ever after.
They have to. It's Hollywood right there.
That's what a mixtape used to be all about. You took your vinyl record, you wanted to say something, but that only a song could say. Just the way you opened up this intro, you drop the needle on the record, the song plays, but it doesn't even tell the full story. So you play the next song, the next song, the next song, make the tape, send it off. Some things change, some things don't.
That's how a lot of middle school and high school relationships start. or started,
Ton,
you know.
right? So now you got Spotify. People doing the same thing on Spotify. So I just love it. I just love
That is an awesome story, and I do
Yeah.
appreciate that, most certainly. You know, non sequitur, I actually was back at home, and my mom had a box of my yesterdays, and in there was a mixtape that, you know,
Nice.
my high school girlfriend gave to me, but she gave it to me before, like, she was my high school girlfriend, and you know, I'm a stupid 14-year-old kid. I don't realize that these are all love songs, and she likes me, and so, like, I look back at it as a 45-year-old, I'm like, that chick dig me.
Well, no wonder why she became your girlfriend, right?
Exactly.
That's great. That's great.
But all of that to say, I mean, these are all kind of stories about what music does to you. And when you can put it in the forefront of your home and make it a real true statement piece, because the players themselves are 1000% statement pieces. When I first talked to you, I talked to you about how, you know, in terms of audio, when I think of amazing statement piece audio, I think of like Bang & Olufsen, and how their design was meant to not only be an audio tickle to the brain, but also a visual tickle to the brain.
Exactly.
And I think Vertical Grooves does that excellently.
Well, that was one of the things unfortunately, when a company's getting squeezed financially, they start cutting around the edges, right? All for the sake of trying to keep the company alive to make a profit. So when my partner and I took over the company, we knew that the design is what catches everybody. People don't just say they like the turntable, they say they love the turntable. So why is that? There's something about the lines of that turntable, the structure it. I'm not going to get into who's the, you know, what the circles go around like a seashell has it in a rainbow. Who is that guy?
It's the Fibonacci sequence.
Fibonacci, right.
Yeah.
So there's like something about the Fibonacci lines on this turntable that people absolutely adore. And when they talk about it in the word of love and not just like. So to maintain that quality costs money. It costs money. And even though there's been some imitators out there who've tried to make it a little bit smaller, have tried to change one little thing, something happens. Something happens when the imitators come in and it loses its je ne sais quoi, which this is maintained. And we've fought to maintain that look.
Again, I mean, it is an amazing look. And then, you know, additionally, the other product that you have that is pretty stellar is the Bluetooth gramophone. And I actually, in my other room in my office, have an old school gramophone that is a
Nice.
hand crank gramophone that it was my father's and it was given to me. And, you know, I don't have any vinyl to put on it, but I mean, it's just in terms of like the aesthetic of it. And I think it does something to us mentally to remind us where we've come from and bring us, you know, connect us to where we are today. Like you just said, that resurgence of the analog. So, you know, it's very apparent to me that in the design aesthetic of the company, you are bringing all of these things together. What I want to know is, you know, you hit on it. You hit on the fact that you guys were struggling financially and you were cutting corners to try and make ends meet to make it happen. You gotta draw a line in the sand. I know that from your experience with your past, you have a lot of understanding what bootstrapping is like and having the ability to build up something from the ground up. You guys had the luxury of maybe looking to put a little bit more investment in it, but I know there's certain times that throwing good money at bad is not necessarily the best case. Was there a moment that you were sitting there thinking, okay, this is our hard deck. We're not going above or beyond this to make this work. And then how did you get through that point?
So it almost feels like that every day.
Yeah.
But if anyone tells you that a successful business, or more specifically, a successful product, is not made without compromise, whether it be a movie, whether it be a house, whether it be a turntable, they're lying to you. It's constant trying to figure out, trying to prioritize where will you compromise and where will you not compromise. And so when you don't compromise, oftentimes money's involved, or time, or aesthetic. So out of those three, which is a production triangle in the entertainment business, everyone's always trying to balance out time, money, and aesthetic. That's applicable in almost anything that you make. Everyone who's working on your project always wants the best aesthetic. And everyone wants to do it a little bit faster and not slower. And everyone wants to do it at a certain price, but you can never have all three. So you're constantly trying to figure out which two are you going to hold on to the most? And then which one will you say, you know, I have to let this go? And those kind of decisions happen almost on a daily basis.
It seems to be working thus far in the decision-making process, but you're not kidding. I mean, the pick two conundrum is something that, you know, we deal with as human beings on a daily basis in just about every aspect of our life. And it's funny how that works out that way. But, you know, from a business perspective and looking and figuring out which one of those things you're going to drop, obviously it weighs on you. And, you know, I think that this question actually allows us to maybe bridge into a section of the podcast that I like to refer to as the pressure test. What we talk about is the hardline items and the day-to-day of understanding, like, what's been the toughest things to get by as you're building and growing this company, such as, you know, as you've been making these decisions, is there one that you can really pull at and say, this was the hardest decision I've had to make in this company?
Good question. So I'm going to take a little step back. In the world of manufacturing, there is a phrase that one of my electrical engineers put forth, and I don't realize, I think most entrepreneurs who come up with a great idea for a project don't realize that not only is the design important, but you have to design for manufacturing. And he said it just as like a little aside, but it's absolutely brilliant. It's one thing to be an inventor. It's one thing to make a product work once. But when you have to design for manufacturing, it takes on a whole different paradigm of how you're going to run the business and how you're going to make money on the business. And so that was a really new thing for me, because in the entertainment business, I'll give you an example for a movie, you got one shot at it. You got, you know, can you do re-edits? Maybe, right? Re-edits will cost money, but typically it'll only get worse, worse, worse. When it comes to manufacturing, you'll do edits, but boy, oh boy, if you are set up to do a product one way and you start messing with the inventor's original design, that's a recipe for disaster. So what is the one thing? It's hard. It's hard to make a beautiful turntable with real wood. There's a lot of imitations out there. Holding on to that has been really, really tough. But we have, and it costs a little bit more, but that was something that we committed to.
Yeah. Well, and I think that ultimately the end product shows the value add of that wood. You know, when we talk about the aesthetic, we talk about the Fibonacci sequence, the way that the lines are all running together. I think that there's an additional thought process of metal and wood coming together to have both a substantial understanding of multiple different materials combining to make something beautiful.
You know, my chief engineer, who, you know, hopefully he doesn't ever watch this because I don't want to give him that much credit.
I'm emailing it to him.
Not because he doesn't deserve it, but because it's the one thing that I was fighting him against, and he's been holding on to it. So we have an acrylic platter. Most platters on the cheap turntables today are plastic. You have to remember now what you're dealing with. You're dealing with a vinyl record, and there is something about the acetate from which the wax is made, from which the sounds resonate off of, from which the foundation that vinyl sits on, that although it may be a very minimal difference, when you talk to an audiophile, the platter is not just, you know, something that the vinyl sits on. It's all part of the acoustical experience of listening to a vinyl record, along with 99 other things. But the reason why I'm bringing out platter, because it's made out of very high quality acrylic. So now you got wood and you got metal. And now we have an acrylic that has to fit into these other organic products. Why? Because you want to give the customer the best sound experience they can get. You know? And so the reason why I kind of laughing at myself now, because that was the first thing that I said to him. Acrylic is just way too expensive for the platter. You know, why don't you use MDF board? No, you know, and of course you spent, the next hour, day, week, year telling me why we have to keep the acrylic. So We still make it with acrylic platters.
I don't know enough about platters, but I do know more than I probably ever should need to know about MDF wood, and I'd have fought you on that too.
Okay.
Well, it's so intriguing. And, putting that all together and going back to what you're saying, there's maybe this is something as to why we are gravitating back towards vinyl as a populace. But, you have, if you look at a CD or an MP3, there's one variable, and it's whether or not, that track is going to play on an MP3. Is the CD scratched on a CD? There's more variables on tape, but I think as you go back in technology, there become more and more variables as to what the sound quality of the actual product is going to work off of. And I think that's something that, people maybe subconsciously may get behind, is like when you can create the best sound possible off of a turntable, and it's got all these different elements coming together. It's like, dang, you did it. You've done it.
See, I still have a large CD collection.
Yeah.
Right. I love my CD collection.
Yeah.
When it gets into the sound quality of a vinyl album or a CD, or something that you stream, I don't know. I don't know if many people can tell the exact difference, but here's what I will say. You can hold your music when it's vinyl. I guess you could hold your CD as well. You can't do that in a digital stream. I bought an album yesterday. I bought Bob Marley's Legend album, which I've listened to that CD 1,000 times, and I just came across it and bought it. Why? Because it sounds better? No, because I was with my daughter and we were talking music. And just a little bit earlier in the day, she said, Daddy, of all the songs that you like, what is like your top favorite number one? I said, well, that's too hard to say. No, but you gotta say it. I said, well, something happens when I listen to Three Little Birds with Bob Marley. It just hits me the right way. Where are we? We're in Target now. Target. And we're walking by, and on the vinyl stand, there's the album. So even though I have it on CD, and even though I stream it on my Spotify, it's like, how did I not have this album in my vinyl collection? And sure enough, I pull it out, and it's a gold album. Well, now it replaces the previous album that's been sitting on my turntable for the last year and a half, because it now becomes the story, the thing, the memory, all of it. Because it's a tangible piece of music. So that's a special thing.
Yeah. Well, and you actually, there's a lot to it in the industry too. I think the vinyl manufacturers are really stepping up their game in terms of what they're making records out of now too. And it's no longer just the audio. It's the aesthetic of the actual record itself.
I want to give you two quick examples. Swift, when she put out her last album, and again, mostly for monetary reasons, but she made 4 colored albums. And of course, if you're a Taylor Swift fan, which there are a few of them out there, you had to get all 4 of those colored albums, right? Or you could just select your favorite color one, and it felt a little bit more personalized to you. The story I love to tell is when 20th Century Fox was doing the soundtrack, wanted to re-release the soundtrack for the 40th anniversary of Star Wars. They created... and I met the artist, a 12-inch vinyl that when it plays and a light is hitting just the right spot on the vinyl album, a jet fighter starts flying out into your living room in a hologram. It's incredible. It's on my site, so you could see it. Yeah. But when you start thinking that the imaginative things that people can now start doing with vinyl, it's incredible. So their inspiration, what the music is saying to them, what the music means to them, that can't be done on a CD. That can't be done on, a streamed piece of music. Right. But boy, oh boy, when you hold on to a piece of music like that, the creativity is endless. Yeah, well, you talk about the Taylor Swift, and even with the Star Wars, it's like Pokemon for adults. Like yes. you gotta get all 4 of them. I gotta catch them all, and that's from somebody with kids. How many times I hear from people, oh yeah, my grandfather willed me his vinyl when he died. I love it. I just keep going through it. Yeah. Priceless. Yeah. No, that's priceless. That lineage is priceless. So that music will pass down generation through generation. And if that kid didn't know who his grandfather was at that time, all he has to do is go through his whole album collection and he'll know his grandfather. You know? Again,
well,
priceless.
On that note, my dad actually gave me a vinyl, and he passed away. And this is actually one thing. It's actually framed on my wall, and it was on a gramophone that I have. And it is Sons of the Pioneers, Ghost Riders in the Sky.
Oh, that's great.
It is an amazing record, and it actually, you know, it's no longer playable because it had a crack in it. So I framed it. But, you know, to your point, like, I guess, and I hadn't really thought about it since we started talking of how important that record is to me, you know, and how important it all brings it together, right?
That memory is priceless. That's why I say, you know, again, not just because I sell the product, it's because it happened to me. That vinyl that goes on that turntable, it's not just a 3 or 4 minute song. It's a portal into another experience.
Yeah, certainly.
Starting to sound like an evangelist there, no?
I mean, look, it's one of those seconds. If liking vinyl's wrong, I don't want to be right.
There you go. That's great.
Gosh, you're gonna get me to buy one of these and have a whole.
Yes, I am, for
my
sure.
Gonna get so mad at you. You have no idea.
They all do. They all do. I hear that story a lot.
Yeah, that's funny. Well, okay. So in terms of understanding, you know, the why behind it and kind of what has been hard about it, what I'd love to do is I'd love to actually look at what the next steps for the company is, because obviously it's a business for you too, and you want it to do the best you can. So let's move into a section of the podcast I like to refer to as the scaling secrets. So in Scaling Secrets, what we do is we talk about what you are trying to do in order to grow this brand past where you even think it can be now.
Even before we bought the company, I've always had this vision of a vinyl community. So like peanut butter goes with jelly, or you know, what's often used in the B school is, you know, the razor blade handle and the razor blades. You give the handle away for free, and you've built a customer for the rest of their life by selling them razor blades. So in the world of turntables and vinyl music, the vision, eventually selling these turntables for $1 because they are so gorgeous, and then building a community of vinyl record purchasers that want to be part of the Vertical Grooves community. And so that process is just kicked off on Kickstarter. We haven't built it all out. It takes a little while to build out that software, but we both want to curate people's vinyl collection for them. We want to offer up a community where people can discuss vinyl. Maybe you're going to find a few people as passionate about vinyl as I. I know Instagram has hundreds of thousands of videos on people who love vinyl, but we want to make it a marketplace. So building the Vertical Grooves brand as the ultimate turntable that can play your personal song. What is your ultimate song? Sons of...
Yeah, I'm sorry. Ghost Riders in the Sky. Sons of the Pioneers, Ghost Riders in the Sky, yeah.
You know, who's going to talk more passionately about that song than you? How would you like a digital copy of that song on your turntable that you can retain forever, that you can share with your family, but it all is a part of this community? Now, what if I told you you can own the copyright of that digital song on your turntable that's yours forever, and you're the only one who can have that? Those are the little kind of things of now matching the digital world with the analog world, but all for the basic same thing. The love, not only for music, but that memory, that love for the memory that music gives you. So what is the future? Is the Groove Marketplace.
Interesting.
And that's where the razor blade handle will meet the razor blade. That's where the turntable will meet the vinyl for scaling up.
You just perked my Web3 ears. So you're creating NFTs off of.
We don't like to use that word.
Why?
Because that word is just dog in the business.
Well,
believe me.
Yeah.
Don't tell anybody. But yes, that's exactly it. Except I've dealt with enough people who've been scammed, securities reasons why, very wealthy people, very people who've done a little bit of research, but not enough research. But you're exactly right. 99% of the NFTs out there, I do believe, are scam based. But there's something really precious about having a video NFT that can be tracked, that can be owned, that can be shared in this experience that I do see as a future, but way too early. We're way too early. We're way too ahead of the game on that.
Well, and you know, honestly, like, just to talk back to you on that, like, I don't disagree. I think that there is a lot of opportunities for scams in NFTs, but you're actually talking to somebody who has had very good luck in understanding that marketplace and understanding what maybe the backbone of the reasoning behind why you would want an NFT in the first place. And there's ways to do it. And there's ways to do it to where you don't necessarily have to make NFT a 4-letter word, you know, instead of a three-letter word.
We have a playlist on YouTube where the playlist was VGS NFTs. Those were for all the people who didn't want to wait. And it's usually around Christmas time. People really want their turntable now. I said, well, if you could just sit tight a little bit, we'll send you a NFT of your turntable with your favorite song on it. Everybody loved them.
That's amazing.
They just didn't like the acronym NFT.
Yeah.
So we just had to change the name. But it's still the product.
Yeah.
It's still the product. So now it's a video version of your turntable playing your favorite song.
Okay.
Until we come up with a better acronym.
Well, I'm here for support on that if you want.
Terrific. Yes.
Well, interesting. I mean, that actually, like, what you're doing there, to just kind of wrap that back up, is not only having it goes back to basically what the turntable itself is. It's marrying different materials, different substrates, different design cues, and you're bringing together an amalgamation of something that shouldn't exist together. But when it all comes together, is beautiful and creates beautiful, beautiful music. Right?
Look, there's, it's a vertical turntable. I don't know if you show a turntable right before this podcast. I don't know if maybe you can insert video into this podcast.
We're going to insert the video of the turntable right here.
Perfect. There you go. Editing on the editing fly as we go.
Yeah, in camera.
Because the vinyl albums play on a vertical plane, being able to watch that from your couch, it is mesmerizing. And the original inventor talks about that in his video. That was his movement. There was something mesmerizing about watching the vinyl spin. I totally agree. But for people, as we're talking about it, don't realize that the turntable that we are talking about does play that vinyl on vertical spin. There's a sense is like, how did they figure that out? How did they do that? Turntable sits at a 88-degree angle instead of a 90-degree angle. There's a dual spring mechanism in the tone arm to make sure that the needle stays on the record. So there was some fancy engineering that made it all happen. And for that little tweak, the aesthetic beauty of it far outweighs, it being a gimmick. It just looks beautiful to watch and listen to your records.
Yeah. I mean, you nailed it. You hit it on the head, and I can honestly say that you got a bullseye with the aesthetic of it.
Thank you. There you go.
Well, let's move on to another part of the podcast here. This is the section of the podcast I refer to as the market edge. And this is about staying ahead in the industry. So, what are some trends in the audiophile industry, in the vinyl industry that are coming down the pipe right now that you might want to be aware of, or let people know that is coming?
So I do believe all the creative stuff that can be done on a turntable with a turntable is fascinating. Artists are getting into it now. Artists prefer to sell their music on vinyl. So there's something happening with this vinyl explosion, not just from the consumer, but from the artist end. And there's something magical that's happening on that end. I want to take a short step back, because even though Grammy-worthy, which was the company that first invented this vertical turntable, and I'm going to say invented, but designed for manufacturing a vertical turntable as opposed to just a one-off, there have now been imitators coming in. And of course, the imitators are going to try to beat us down with the price. And that's where they'll skimp on a lot of the materials, the elements, the technology, just because they want to put a vinyl record to play on a vertical plane. So that hurts. right? That hurts because if someone sees my turntable selling for 1,200 and they're going to see another vertical turntable selling for 200, we both look like gimmicks, except to an audiophile. Maybe no insult to a 12-year-old girl, since I have a 12-year-old daughter, but she might not appreciate the difference. So then the question becomes, how do you then take advantage of all the great things about a quality construction, a quality piece? I'm not sure I have that figured out yet. What I do know, and which is why when we talk about scaling and trends, I said before, I think it's more in the vinyl music than in the turntable. I love where we are right now. We're definitely the market leader as far as having the best for manufactured turntable out there on the market. Will there be a more expensive one? Maybe. Will there be cheaper ones? There are, but I don't know. I don't know if there's the scale factor, the trend factor, the ability to operate a really successful business just by the margins of making vertical turntables. The creativity is in the vinyl.
Yeah.
The future.
Well, let me step in and talk to you from my perspective in terms of how I see that, right? First of all, imitation is the highest form of flattery, right? Imitation is the highest form of flattery. That you should take solace in. If there are people that are...
I will tell that to my patent lawyer.
Well, understood. But I say that, and I think that when you look at companies, specifically, you're talking an industry that has always had the A players and the imitators. The audio industry has always had a superior quality product, and then the people that are just getting it out to the masses. Yeah. And truthfully, I think that those two paths do not cross, because the people that are going to want quality are going to always want quality and are always going to buy from you. And then the people that don't care are not the people that you want to be your customer in the first place. You know, it comes down to your ICP, your ideal customer profile, your avatar. Mm-hmm. Who are you marketing to? Who is going to be the person that is purchasing this from you? Because I guarantee you, 95 to 98% of the people that would factor into your ICP avatar would not spend $200 on that unless it was for their 12-year-old daughter, which, you know, even then, that's maybe a stretch. That's kind of expensive for a 12-year-old. So, you know, I guess a little bit of maybe reassurance and solace to be taken out of that in terms of the marketing background that I have, to feel that, again, that avatar is solid. And the service that you're doing to that avatar is unbelievable. So knowing where that sits, taking into consideration that the vinyl is going to continue to progress, and we get more starships and more colors of Taylor Swift's album, which is amazing. I need them all. I don't even own vinyl except for that one. But
another really cool one is I forget the name of the group, but when you pick up the album, it looks like just a bunch of mess, hogwash lines all over the place on the vinyl itself. And then once it starts spinning, you see the four faces of the group, because as it's spinning, it just hits the right speed where you get to see your favorite group in your living room on that vinyl album.
That's awesome. That is super cool. No, that's really awesome. And you know, that's the thing, is like the creativity that goes along with this. And we talked about it earlier in the podcast. The way that vinyl is really progressing is just amazing to me. Like, and one of I'm on TikTok all the time, and like I get on my FYP and I see these people pressing vinyl.
Yeah.
It is mind-blowing to me, that whole process. It is so awesome to watch.
I love watching the TikTok videos of people who are so proud of their vinyl collection. You know, they have this rolling camera going all through their basement. You know, their kitchen has still got Formica on top and, you know, an old blender or something. But then all of a sudden when they get into their basement, it's this beautiful palace of vinyl records. It's like, that's great.
Formica actually tracks though with the vinyl collection. So
It does. It does.
that's hilarious. Well, great. Well, moving on to the next portion of this podcast. You know, I don't ask this to everybody, and this is kind of something that I like to consider our signature segment. But I feel like you might be able to pull a good one out of your hat here. And this is a section that we like to call the best bad advice. So in the best bad advice, I ask you, what is the worst piece of business advice that someone has ever given to you? And how has your life changed by not accepting it or not listening to it?
In this lifetime or in a previous lifetime?
You have had a couple rounds, so you just think about the best one. I could think of a few that you could probably...
Here, in manufacturing, I know this is not going to win me any favors, but when we first started this process, I had been told you need a contract manufacturer. And I don't know if you know exactly what that is. I don't know how many people out there know what that is.
Yeah.
But a contract manufacturer is supposed to be the project manager that's going to take your designs and then build your product cost effectively for a fee or for a percentage.
Yeah.
Not only did it destroy the first company, Grammy-worthy, but it almost destroyed us because that was the advice. You have to have a contract manufacturer. It wasn't until we brought in the chief engineer and I was able to oversee the production of the turntables myself, I came to realize that that was the worst piece of advice, was to get a contract manufacturer, because they just want to be able to make money, get by with as minimal headaches as possible, with the best qualified labor that they could get at the cheapest price, right? Goes back to the triangle of production.
Right.
And unfortunately, there's going to be skimping all around. And then 3 years down the line, you realize that if you want to sell a product that you're not going to get returns on, it's not going to work. But the contract manufacturer's happy. They made their money while you were trying to stay in business for 4 or 5 years and then move on. So in the world of manufacturing, I know everyone will say you need a contract manufacturer. I disagree.
I spent 7 years in high-end manufacturing and mass production in my careers. I'm like an onion, Tony. I got layers.
Sounds familiar.
Sounds familiar. I appreciate what you're saying there. And in fact, you are 1000% right. If you want to have control of how your product is made, you need to control how your product is made. You need to have your eyes on every single step of that entire process. Let me ask you something. Where are your products manufactured?
Chicago.
So this is American-made product through and through.
Yes.
Which is a much easier way to keep your eyes on it. A lot of my clients, a lot of my guests, they make products that they don't have the ability to see. One of my past guests, his entire line is made in China, and it's a very progressive version of his product. And, you know, you talk about the fear of letting control of that go. And you still have to be able to control all of that. Being able to actually see it all happening in front of you is phenomenal. Did you move it to Chicago once you left that contract manufacturer, or was it always done in Chicago?
The product was born in Chicago when the company was trying to, there's two really unfortunate things that happened in the first go around. Of course, when the company was trying to make a product, sell a product, and make a profit on the product, the enticement of doing things in China, getting products from China were enticing. The contract manufacturer purchased a set screw that he was able to get for a couple of pennies cheaper. And that set screw, which cost about maybe 70 cents to get, which was part of a set screw in the tone arm, destroyed the company. That tone arm, all of a sudden, wasn't as precision as it should be. And then if someone just, banged that tone arm slightly, that tone arm could almost fall off. And so the very first thing that we did when we relaunched the company, the restartup, was put all the time and energy to figure out what was happening with that tone arm. We found it being that screw. And of course, that screw was no longer an American-made screw. It was a Chinese manufactured screw. And the threads on that screw weren't strong enough for the tone arm, clipped off, And now here goes somebody who spent $500 for a turntable with a broken tone arm.
Yeah.
So, yeah, everything is done in Chicago. Well, here, 90% is done in Chicago. I'm trying to think. There may be a couple of electronic components that we get from China. It's all built in Chicago.
Yeah.
Wood is a big thing.
What type of wood is it?
So there are different levels of quality veneer. People are probably more familiar with it when talking about flooring in a house, right? You could have actual hardwood floors, but more often than not, most floors are some kind of veneer, which is one type of wood that holds the base and then a wood on top. And so in the wood veneer world, because trees don't come out just as square boxes for a turntable, there's single A, double A, triple A, and 4A, quadruple A. Our turntables are the highest quality. They're 4A, right? And so it's walnut, but it's not a walnut block.
Gotcha. Yeah. No, and I mean that makes perfect sense, because also another thing that most people wouldn't understand, except, again, I had a decade of experience working with wood, is that if you have a wood block, it's going to expand and contract.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
You can't have a wood block.
You can't do
especially when you're dealing with precision functionality.
Yeah. Yeah.
Someone's got a damp house or an extra dry house, all of a sudden your turntable's not going to play. So
Correct.
You couldn't have that.
Nope. So that's something that, ultimately, like, it almost sounded like you were disappointed that it wasn't a wood block, but you knew the answer there. And luckily I did too. You can actually kind of combat that very quickly to say the reason why we can't do it is because of this. So that's we give you the best possible veneer that we can potentially find. And I'll tell you another thing, veneers have come a very long way in the past 10 years. It's unreal. Going back
unlike, in China, unfortunately, what happens often is they'll say they're selling a wood turntable, and it's actually like a wallpaper. Mm-hmm. You can actually take it like a paper and peel it off, and that's what they're calling wood.
Yeah.
And so
it's like a Polonia veneer where it's just super paper thin, almost pulp.
Yeah, it's like wallpaper is the best way I could describe it.
Yeah. No, that's very interesting. Well, remind me, because I have another thought process for you about bamboo.
Okay.
Yeah, it's very intriguing to get and understand, of how all those pieces come together, and to be able to keep control over it and to have oversight of all those items coming together. I don't think anybody's going to fault you from getting electronics from China or Japan. They're doing it the best.
Yeah.
We don't have a whole lot of electronics manufacturers here in the States.
But it's the same thing. To Chinese electronic manufacturers, they'll offer you this gauge wire compared to that gauge wire compared to that gauge wire. I think it's foolish when you try to go for the cheapest gauge, because you're only going to, especially on a high-end product, you're only going to hurt yourself. But when you have a project manager working, for a contract manufacturer on this particular product, they might skimp a little bit on the gauge of wire. Well,
especially if that ends up packing his pockets.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And so, no, I mean, we're making a fine product. We need fine materials for the right experience.
This is a chance to highlight what you guys do well. I know we've talked about it already, and just understanding that you probably, if not 100%, are one of the nicest turntables on the market, specifically the only turntable of quality that is going to be in a vertical scenario. But what do you think is your number one differentiator as to why you do it better?
I have to imagine that I love the turntable. I love it. Right? It's not just a product that has a bottom line and a 25% profit margin. I want someone to experience what I experience on that turntable. And every time we send one out, I wonder that. And there's always something in the back of my mind. What do we do to improve that a little bit more, improve the experience a little bit more? And so by holding on to that, I do see the scale factor. And the scale factor really isn't, how do we get the BOM? How do we get the bill of materials down a little bit cheaper? It's how do you make the experience for the end customer better? And I think if I keep holding on to that line, I think we'll be okay.
Well stated. It is obviously a passion for you. It comes through in this conversation. This is something that has been a pleasure to talk with you about, understanding the trials and tribulations of what it's like to take over a company and take over a legacy media and work to bring it back in a manner that is going to work not today, not 5 years from now, but 25 years from now, and have just an amazing experience throughout that time.
And I want to share this also. The inventor of it was a young man who had a lot of passion, but maybe didn't have enough experience. And I say that humbly and fondly because we're still in contact. Here's exactly what I said to him. He gave birth to the baby. I've just been nursing it along. What will happen in our future? I don't know, but maybe the product just wasn't ready for him. Or he wasn't ready for the product, or couldn't handle it. Maybe there's something beautiful that happens in our future. I don't know. But it's once again why coming at this it sounds overused, but coming at this with a sense of love enables me to have those kind of conversations with the previous owner of the company, right? With the previous CEO. And so it's for the ultimate good of getting a good product out there for people to have that same experience that I'm having. So it's not bullshit what I'm trying to say.
I get it.
It's like, yes, I want people to have that portal experience on my turntable.
Yeah.
And so.
Well, it doesn't come across as bullshit. It doesn't.
Good.
The passion is strong. Go back to the start with the passion is strong with this one.
Yeah.
I
feel it.
Well, all right, let's move on. We're going to wrap this up with a bit of a takeaway shot.
Okay.
If you could leave our viewers and listeners with one piece of advice, with one big lesson, what would it be?
Oh, man. Know why you're doing what you're doing. It's too hard. It's too hard to just do something for the money. There's too many obstacles on the way. There's too many problems that if you're just doing it for the money, you're just going to give up. But if you know why you're doing something, you're going to keep pushing through. And if it's money, you're probably, more often than not, you're probably not going to reap the rewards financially, emotionally, spiritually that you think you're going to get. But if you know why you're doing what you're doing, whether it be a turntable, whether it be the cure for cancer, and if it's for, you believe, a wholesome cause for good reason, as opposed to an egotistical reason, then there's going to be a lot of joy when people will jump on your wagon and enjoy the ride with you. Really understanding why you're doing what you're doing is really, I believe, critical.
It's beautiful. I actually was sitting here thinking about why I'm doing this throughout.
There you go.
That
That's
whole
right.
conversation, and it made me feel good.
Good.
In regards to bringing people together and asking them these questions, because you're right. If you believe in what you're doing, you're going to go a heck of a lot farther than if you're just trying to make the most out of what.
It's got to hit you. Something has to hit you in the core. Something has to hit you in the core as to why you're doing it. And if you can figure that out, I think you'll do well.
No, that's awesome. That's a wrap on our conversation with Tony Vitale, an entrepreneur who didn't just ride the vinyl resurgence. He helped redefine it. From flipping a struggling business into a design-forward powerhouse to creating some of the most visually stunning and sonically rich audio gear on the market. Tony's story is proof that great ideas paired with bold execution can change an industry. If you want to check out Vertical Grooves and experience the future of vintage audio for yourself, head over to verticalgrooves.com. And if you enjoyed this episode, hit that subscribe button, drop us a review, and share it with someone who loves great sound and even better stories. Until next time, stay curious, stay creative, and keep getting into the groove.